Hi, everyone. I hope you can hear me fine. Let us know in the chat if you can hear us. And first of all, welcome to another webinar from Ironhack. If this is the first time that you're here, my name is Raquel. I work at Ironhack, of course. I'm the community manager. And if it's the first time that you're hearing about Ironhack, we are a global tech school. We have boot camps on web development, UX, UI design, and data analytics, both remote and in person. And we have campuses around the world, in America and in Europe, and as I told you, in remote. If you want to know a little bit more about our boot camps and what we do and about Ironhack in general, you have a green button here below the videos that says useful links and extra resources. You can know more about it, or you can ask directly to us. It's totally fine. Glad that sound is great, Francis, and I'm glad that you have coconut water, Mario. I'm sorry about this little delay, but good that you got your waters for the webinar. So regarding Crowdcast rules, and before going into the webinar itself, let's go and see what this is all about. So I see that you discovered the chat in here. I'm glad that you did, and you can leave your comments in here. In fact, I'd love to know where you're from. I know some people are from Berlin, some are from Lisbon as me. We are all in different locations. I'd love to know where you're seeing us from. And if you have any background in web development, this is the first time, or you just want to learn a little bit more, if you're learning on your own, leave your comments in the chat. We'd love to know. So this is the chat where you'll be leaving your comments. But if you want to ask questions, and I'm guessing you will because this is a code along, please use the Ask a Question section here below the videos, because you can upvote the questions, we can comment them, and we will be sharing links as well. So if we'll be sharing important stuff, please upvote them. And this way they don't get lost, even when the webinar ends, because that's another thing, this will be recorded. So if you feel like you can't keep up, or if you want to review and try again later with more time, pausing a video and so on, you can do it, and the questions will still be here. So if there are questions that you had during the webinar, you will still have them answered in here. Paris, Lisbon, Holland, amazing. A lot of different places. I'm loving this. Amazing, guys. All right. So in any point of the webinar, if you see that the sound is not great, or if anything is happening, please leave that on the chat. All right. Tunisia, amazing. I'd love to know your background as well. We have a poll in here. I know that some people voted, and I'm glad most of you are newbie. You're going to be leaving here today knowing how to make a landing page. So that's amazing. So without further ado, if you have no other doubts about Crowdcast itself, I'm going to pass the word to Andre. He will be leading the webinar today, and Val will be answering all your questions. So again, please ask your questions on Ask a Question so that don't get lost, and she will be answering while we're doing the code along and so on. Oh, we have alumni here, or people who are doing the bootcamp now. Amazing. All right, guys, so I'm going to pass the word to Andre now. All good?
Words now, yes. Just to be sure, as everyone listening, the internet in Berlin is not the best, or Germany, so if there's anything that is not understandable, please let me know and I'll try to repeat it. Or if at any point I cut off, I have incredible Val and Raquel here to warn me that I should wait a few seconds.
We'll do that.
Cool. So let's just start then, right? Perfect. Okay, the first step for any meaningful presentation is to show slides. I hate slides as a whole, but I'll try to show some slides to give you all an introduction of this webinar. So sharing the screen, very important. Okay, spoiler. So as you know, the theme of this presentation is coding for remote entrepreneurs. By the end of this, I will hope to build a landing page. So who am I? My name is Andre. I'm from Lisbon. I'm now living in Berlin. I'm a full stack web developer, currently working at Lisk, a blockchain company from Switzerland, Germany. We build a blockchain application in JavaScript, but at the same time, I'm also a teacher assistant at Ironhack. And I've taught about 120 plus students on their coding journeys, which is always interesting to see new ways of learning. First things first, what this webinar won't teach you is how to hack the mainframe, how to build the next Facebook, even though I hope with an amazing ideas that we will be able to brainstorm here as well. We'll get close enough. I won't teach you how to live La Vida Loca. I won't organize your remote finances. I won't teach you how to go to Bali and be a remote entrepreneur. And I will not teach you the code of the internet so that you know it better than yourself. Things that are very important for this to be valuable for everyone is that I don't want you just to listen. I want to also play around with it. I want you to break code. One thing that's always very important is that you code along. A line of code won't break the internet. So even if you're feeling scared about doing it, just write it. It's fine. Coding is a skill and it takes time. This is much more important that by the end of these hours, you'll be able to look at it like, okay, I think I get it. I can at least read it. Maybe I'm not good enough yet to talk it, but it's a communication that I want to be able to do. It's not as daunting as some people might try to make you think. It's actually simple if you think of the way that a computer will read these instructions. It will go through it. And coding makes you feel super empowered. As somebody that had faced health issues before, and I was never a coder before I joined Ironhack, it's interesting to see how empowered you feel. You feel like a Superman or a Superwoman or whatever, and you feel super powerful. And once again, you fine? Okay, sorry. Code, break things, understand that when we were coding, we're not breaking the internet once again. And for the love of God, celebrate whenever stuff happens. This is repeated. This is nice. Once again, celebrate, have fun, you'll go crazy. And my personal goals for you for this whole webinar is that you leave this feeling completely like a hacker man. Cool? I hope so. I'm not seeing the chat. I hope that so far I'm not talking too fast. If I am, please let someone know and I'll try to revert back to it. So, technical-wise, I saw that a lot of people are complete newbies in coding. We'll try to go much slower in the coding section, but the things that we will learn are HTML. HTML is basically considered the skeleton of the web, and that's why you have this image. CSS will also touch it. There's a lot more languages that touch the web, but the most important ones, the bare bones of everything is HTML, CSS, and as you can see, you have a different illustration here. CSS is what gives something to the human body. In this case, it gives color, is what gives some kind of visual representation of what we are building. And then mobile CSS is how we manage a way to stretch our information to make sure that users nowadays are better suited to get content of our web pages, of our businesses on their phone. Probably a lot of you have listened to the fact that I think it's over half of the people that visited the web are now doing it via their mobile phones. So what is HTML? It's a set of written rules on how to organize the content on a page. It's the skeleton and defines the building blocks of the web page. Don't worry too much about this part. All of this so far is just introductory, and we'll go through code and we'll try to guide you through the understanding. The most important thing about be it HTML, CSS, or any programming languages is that we'll always have to think of the computer as the most dumb thing. If you tell it to do something with a comma or an asterisk, the computer will never know how to do it. Therefore, you need to be very specific on what you're building, and you'll see that in a few minutes. Important also is that HTML has sizes and default sizes, and also default visions of the world. We have height, everybody's heard of it. We have width, everybody's heard of it. But we also have the idea of block elements and line elements. If we think about in a book, when we have a paragraph, it takes the whole width of the page, or as much as the page lets it. That's basically considered a block level element. It takes the whole block of the page. For instance, this image takes just this space. This is considered a line level element. Is this clear? I hope this is clear. Once again, I'm not seeing the chat. I should, but so line level element and block level element. Let me actually make sure that I see the chat. Put it here to the side in case I missed something. Okay, cool. And like I said, we have the block level elements, which are the ones that take as much space as possible. Cool. So what does HTML look like? As we can see, and let's try to see it, we have body between these weird little brackets, bigger It's bigger than nothing. It's a body smaller than nothing. It's weird. Then we have H1s. Then we have div or dive, whatever this is. We have a class equals. Then we have some brackets that says say hi. We have welcome to this webinar. I hope everyone's feeling welcome in this webinar. And then we have slashes and dives or divs again and bodies. So let's break this down. We have a body. HTML, like I said, it's the building blocks of the web, and the web is read initially by computers. So we have to say that the body of a web page, if we think about the idea of what's C, it's the body. And then we have an H1, which is basically going to be a header. We're going through headers and how they are separated. But think of an H1 as some kind of information that you want the user to be super in your face. Think about the title of a book, the title of a blog post, a title in these slides. This is basically an H1. Then we have this div, dive. It's usually called div. To Tom, we're going to be using Codepen. We'll go through that in a second. This div, it's either a divider or divisor, whatever you mean. It's just a dividing block of content. Class, we'll go through classes in a second. And then we have the text. As you can see, body, H1, and this div always have content wrapping them. They don't have to always be text. For example, here, H1 has hello, but body has an H1 and a div. This is basically how HTML itself is read. It's read from top to bottom, and you have chunks of text that are then organized throughout the page. This is Facebook without any styling. And as you can see, if you think about it, we have this jump to, it's a block. Sections of this page, accessibility help. We have clearly in HTML, we have defined blocks of text. Then we have a big image that takes the whole space. Then we have Facebook helps you connect with and share your people with life, whatever. Once again, it takes the space. Then we have things. But all of this, it's just built with HTML. This is what the world would be without the CSS. And now we're jumping to the CSS side. Like I mentioned before, it's what gives life to these websites. I guess everyone will look at this and be a little bit cringed out, because it's true. Without the CSS, the website might look ridiculous or might look ugly itself. This is Facebook. This is the current version of the German version of Google. Probably 40% of the page, because I didn't know how to screenshot the whole page. Without any screenshotting or without any CSS, this page is 7 times bigger than it's supposed to be. With CSS, the page is what we are all aware of, that greeting of Google search, what we see here, but it's much bigger. Here, it's one icon up above. We have another icon up above. We have a logo. All of these things are then muzzled together and bundled together thanks to CSS. So what does CSS look like? And once again, I know that I'm going fast. We'll go through the coding, and then we'll be able to see things much better. What the CSS looks like? We have a selector. We're selecting every H1. We're giving it a property name, and we're giving it a property value. Don't worry about these things. Val will also share a couple of things on the chat, but this is the main thing. Once again, we have a property. We have a selector. We're saying every P. You're basically screaming, every P, your color now is blue. The difference between background color and color is basically just the font color or the whole section, the whole place that the content is settled on. Again, we already broke it down. Another thing that I hope everybody remembers, that I mentioned sizes. On HTML, we have the block level elements, and we also have line level elements. In CSS, we're dealing with sizes in different versions. We have the most well-known, which is pixels. We have points, we have rems, we have ems, we have characters, we have percentage, and I think the last time that I counted, I think it's around 7 things. Once again, selector, property, value. This does not exist. This was just a way to show another way of looking at it. So another thing that it's important is, how would we differentiate between H1s and divs? Going back to this, we have some text here, some text here, some text here, some text here. If we want to style just this one, how would we be able to select it directly, point it in our CSS? We're going to be using something called classes and IDs. And these are attributes that help us point to a very specific section in our styling. IDs are unique. It's like your your passport. Your passport is only yours. And classes, think of them more like humans. We're all humans here. Maybe there's a couple of animals, a couple of fishes or cats are looking at it, but basically we're all humans. We are part of the class human. We are part of the class people from Berlin. We're part of the class people from Ironhack. These are all classes. They identify us, but they are not our unique identifiers. I hope that makes sense. So in the slides, let's figure out coding a little bit. Is that fine? Can I get a couple of thumbs up on the chat, something that I can understand that things are flowing correctly? Some messages, people saying, I don't get it. What's the meaning of life? Words? Maybe not. Okay, let's start with the coding. If you want to start with the, perfect. Thank you very much for people that are now reacting. I really appreciate it. So, great. So the website that we're going to now is called codepen.io. Or is it codepen.io or codepen.com? I'm confused. Probably codepen.io. What is the meaning of life? It's 42. You don't need anything else. It's just 42. Cool. 1 second. So I'll give... okay. We have a normal live. Okay, thank you. You're doing without a camera. Thank you very much. Okay, cool. So codepen.io, let me check if I open this without an account, how we can do this. So Codepen is a website that lets us try out HTML and CSS. Okay, so from codepen.io, you just click on this button that says Start Coding. And then you're greeted by this dreadful, this kind of ugly thing that you don't know what to do. Here, we're separating things between HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. This webinar doesn't have the time to go through JavaScript, so I'll just push it to the side. Doesn't matter. That's fine. In the meantime, another thing is that, as you can see, the developers have a very weird sense of humor. And this is actually hilarious. It's a pun. I love puns. I hope that's clear. Well, HTML and CSS. So as we were saying, HTML is basically the skeleton, and CSS is basically what makes the skeleton presentable. We don't want any weird bones walking around in our streets. We want humans walking around our streets. So if we start with the body, we now have a white page. What is Codepen signaling to us is that from this point on, we are actually going to be writing code. We're going to be writing HTML, and now we have a blank canvas for us just to have fun. So what I will do is I'll wait a second for everyone to just get acquainted with what the hell is going on. I hope everyone in the meantime has clicked the Start Coding, and I hope that this is achievable. So far, we're good. I know I breezed through a lot of things, but now is the part that we're actually going to get our hands dirty. Is that fine? I hope so. I'm just hoping to get a little bit of feedback from the people. Ideally, once again, if you start from codepen.io, and I'm going to start over from scratch. If I'm here, I'll just leave it. That's fine. Once again, for me, it's pen because I already have an account, but you click on the Start Coding, it opens up this. And if you don't want the JavaScript to annoy you a little bit, just drag it to the side. And now I write body, and I close the body. What is happening here, by the way, because I think I missed it here, is that this is opening. This is basically, if we think about it in the skeleton, we're saying this is the first bone of the arm, and this is where the arm closes. So if we say this is the arm, now we have the hand, we have the forearm, we have the elbow, we have the shoulder, blah, 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 and then we're closing it. In this case, in HTML, we always write everything within the bounds of the body, or everything that it's important to us, at least. So let's start with the H1 that I mentioned, the first thing that I saw, or that we saw, H1, and I say, hello. I write this, and after half a second, we have hello showing. Time for the celebration. We said that this was one of the rules of this whole webinar, is to celebrate when things appear on screen. And I got less slide. No, this is fine. Now I have too much light. Stop it. So celebrate, everyone. Pat yourselves on the back. Clap to yourselves. This is amazing. We have the first piece of content on the page. We are now all developers. Isn't life exciting? I hope so. Once again, I'm talking alone. So trying to also get myself interested. Not interested, entertained rather. So we have H1. And I told you that this is the highest level of text that you can have. But why do we have a 1? Because we also have a 2. Hello from the H2. Amazing. People are bravo. I'm getting a couple of seconds later. We have now hello from the H2. Can you see that now the H2 is actually smaller than the H1? It means that this is also important for the user to get, but visually speaking, the H1 is the bigger one. It's like the title, and this is probably a subtitle or a not as important title. We also have, if we have H2, we also have the H3. H3 is important, but not so much. We have also an H4. Here it starts to get almost unimportant, if that is even a word. In some browsers, you also have the H5 and the H6. So just so you can see the differences. Oops. And H6. Hi, everybody. H6. Forgot the H. Okay, as you can see, this is starting to get quite absurd. H1 is actually readable. H2 is still. H3 is good. H4 like, what is going on? H5 and H6 is barely readable. So these are headings, and basically these are, like I said, subtitles or sections on the page, and these are demarkers, things that mark text as very important for the user. You won't write the whole Bible with an H1. It doesn't make sense. But you'll probably write in your thesis or in your business plan, you'll say on H1, dog shearing business, remote dog shearing business. It's a perfect business for the remote times for Corona. H2 will probably say sections, H3 subsections, and go from that point on. You've also seen P in the CSS example. P stands for paragraph. And P basically creates a paragraph. This is all the text will be here. So basically, this is where the main pieces of text will be situated. Now we have an unexpected character. That's false. One thing that we have to be very careful about the P is that if I do this, I'm going to copy this whole thing multiple times. This will create the paragraph. And you would think that if I do enter, enter, do 2 returns, I would also have it enter, enter. But as you can see, nothing happens. Because like I said, it engulfs everything into one section. If you want things to have space, you either close the P tag here and open a new one here, which is probably better. Assuming that we have our own websites, probably better that we're writing it and we can see sections. It's better if you separate them as paragraphs. Or if you want to be hackerman, you can also, just going to copy this. You can also have, like in many books, for example, we have text, and then we have a break, but it's still within the bounds of the paragraph. We can do a BR. BR just stands for break. As you can see, it doesn't give us the space of a paragraph. It's like a normal enter. I hope that makes sense. So here we already have seen multiple different HTML elements, which is interesting. So let's look at them. We have the body. I hope everyone remembers what the body stands for. It's basically what engulfs the whole content. H1 is the main header. It's the main thing that you see when you look at the website. H2 is the sub-main header. I don't know what to call it. H3, H4, H5. These are just points of relevance to the user. As a developer myself, I hardly ever go below the H4. And the H4 usually has other kinds of styling. So far, we're only looking at a skeleton. Cool? Now, let's look at what CSS looks like. So if I now say H1 on the CSS section, I give it a space, I open the curly brackets, or how I like to call them, the mustaches. You just open the mustaches, and now I'm just going to take the example that we had in our code, which is I'm going to take background color red. And now we have background color red. This is another time for celebration. Everybody celebrates in their houses. Everybody celebrates next to their computer or phone. We have something showing. We not only have text, but now we have colors. Isn't life amazing? Okay, cool. Once again, selecting this H1, we're giving it a background color of red. Now, this is interesting if some people in the chat can answer, and I'll stall a little bit. Why do you think that the red takes over the whole screen? Do you remember anything that we said, or that I said, in the presentation about different sizes in HTML? I hope so. I think I'll just stall a little bit until somebody answers. Maybe also Val can answer, or Raquel. Second. The crowdcast might have a little bit of a delay, so that's why I'm giving it a few seconds. But basically, if no one answers, I know all of you got it, but just to be sure, inline. No, perfect. People are answering. Cool. It's not inline, it's a block. So the H1 takes a block, even if the text itself is only one character. Even if I just write the H here, it's a block. Thank you very much. So even if I only have a H here, H1 takes the whole block. Does that make sense? I hope it makes sense. And now H1 takes a whole block, H2 takes a whole block. All of these actually take whole blocks. If I say P, background color, let's give it a dark gray. And don't worry, you're not supposed to memorize all of this. This comes with practice, and some of these values are just like it because it's interesting. As you can see, paragraph also takes care of the whole block. But now we have an issue that I said that we were going to look at. How would we select only one of these paragraphs? We select it with either classes or IDs. In this case, because I'm building this website, I'm just going to select the first one, and I'm going to come here. On the first P, within still the brackets, I'm going to say class equals. And now in quotes, I'm going to say, how do you type the mustaches? That depends a lot on the keyboard. So I'm just going to put them here so you can copy it. Depends on the keyboard. I don't know where you are. I think if it's Portugal, it's Command-Shift-7, I think. If you're in US keyboard, it's right above the enter. So you'll try to there, but if you're not getting it, you can see that you can copy the brackets from there. So how would I specifically select? I say class equals the only one that matters. Why am I giving them dashes? It's because if I remove the dashes, this will have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 classes. This would have the class the class only. This doesn't make sense. So how do I say it in the CSS? We have to specify that we don't want just every paragraph. Cool. So we don't want to just specify that we want every paragraph. What I actually want is to get the dot, the only one that, oops, starting to regret it, the only one that matters. And then same thing, I say background color, yellow. Now only one is selected. Isn't life wonderful, people? I hope it is. I hope you all feel like it. I want to celebrate. We're doing an amazing job. We're actually speeding through HTML and CSS a little bit. So far, we haven't started building a website, but I just want you to see the different things that HTML and how HTML and CSS themselves work together. So far, what do we have? We have a couple of blocks on our page. Then we have a P that has text with the class, and we're selecting that class. Now, I want to show you another thing that CSS also has. CSS stands for cascading style sheets. And cascading style sheets is nothing else than something that reads the code from top to bottom. The way that I usually explain it to some of my students is I think of CSS as a waiter. A waiter at the restaurant that has a list of everyone that's coming, and as things are coming through, it separates them and splits them into their own table. So basically, you get an H1, and it says H1s go that way. P's dark gray background. The only one that matters is, oh, you're this one. I know that you wanted to have this background, but you're not going to have it. You're going to have the class because it's more specific to you. It's the same thing as saying all football supporters go that way, but all from a specific team go that way. It's more specific, and this is a very important thing in CSS called specificity. And I'll ask Val to share something. It's called a specificity in CSS, which you can see, and it's basically a game where you can test how specific something is, and that wins. But why did I go on to this tangent? It's about cascading. It reads from top to bottom. So which means that if I now come here and I say P, background color green, for example, every other P that is not in a class will have this color. Why? Because it's lower in the list. So as the waiter is going through the instructions, it initially said to all paragraphs, now you're dark gray, but eventually got a new notice, a new thing on the list that says, no, you're actually green. But because this one, it's actually a class, that's how it's important for them to see. It's because it's a class more specific, therefore it gains precedence over everything else. This is the idea behind colors. Obviously, there's a lot more things, and we'll go through them. But I hope this so far is going great. I want to see, apparently there's a question. Struggling with pure code. I've built Webflow. What's your opinion about it? Webflow and website builders are very important. They have a place. The thing with Webflow or Wix or Squarespace or other resources that we can share is that probably the moment that you try to get a little bit more custom, you'll have to code it yourself. So even if you use one of those, you can still learn code. It's going too fast. Okay. It's going too fast. I will try to go a little bit slower. Please ask questions and feel free to try to talk with somebody to interrupt me if I'm going too fast. And I'll take a break here in this section a little bit so we are all here. Still answering questions. I'll go back to the code that we've written so far. Webflow is good. Squarespace is good. Wix is good. WordPress, they're all amazing tools for what they do. Thing is, once again, the moment that you have to do something which is a little bit more custom, you're going to have to code it yourself. And you can either code it within the boundaries of your knowledge, or you may be even more restricted. Of course, I'll scroll up. Or you can be even more restricted to the code that the platform itself lets you write. Cool. I hope this is clear. And I hope that this is clear what I think about Webflow. And going back to the code, so far, we've written these lines. Going through it line by line again. On the HTML side, we have a body that wraps the whole content. The body basically is telling the web page, this is everything that you'll see. Think about the Lion King. Everything within the body is your kingdom. It's yours. H1 through H6, these are just levels of attention that you want to grab from the user. And HTML is basically telling the computer, look, listen up, this is important. H2 is, this is very important, not as important as an H1, and then you go scrolling down up to the paragraph. So this, semantically speaking, is much more important here. It seems that inserting after colors or space after P doesn't matter. So you should use the semicolon after here. You need the colon to differentiate between the properties and the property values. But the space itself, it doesn't actually matter. For me, it's just easier to read. And this is another thing. You will always be coding for two things at the same time. You're coding for yourself in 5 minutes, and you're coding for a computer. You're coding in a language that the computer must understand, and you're coding in a way that you at least want to look at your code. If, for example, I do this, if I do something like this, which will theoretically still work, it's correct, but I will be hating myself by the end of the day. I cannot understand. I have to parse it, and I would rather give it spaces, give it enters, give it the return so that I can read the code, and in 5 minutes, I can read it. And this is also something important. If you're going to learn how to code, it's better for you to try to follow practices not only that are good for coding, but also that work for you. Best practices don't necessarily follow stricter. Maybe they do, but for you in the beginning, it's better for you just to code like a maniac and not get it, or only you get it, rather than try to follow something. I like this because I can read this and I'm already accustomed to it. So going back, we have now the paragraphs. The paragraphs are just paragraphs of text, chunks of text. We have another paragraph here, and then we have another paragraph here, and in the middle, we have a break tag. Everything that it's usually engulfed in these brackets are considered break tags. As you can see, this break does not close because it's basically just that. It's just a break. You don't need to wrap content around the break because you're breaking from content, so you don't need to wrap anything about it. And then we have more text. And on CSS, we're just saying every H1 on this page will have a background color of red. The line for me is in yellow. So if the line for you is in yellow, probably Val can also see it, but what I'll guess is that probably the class, the way that you wrote a class, or the way that you're selecting might have a typo in it. It's totally fine, and probably Val will be able to help you there. Once again, this H1 says, every H1, please have a background color of red. This P will say, every paragraph, please have a color of dark gray. Then this one will say, everyone with the class, therefore, please pay attention to me more, has a background color of yellow. And by the way, every paragraph, remember what I told you about dark gray? Scratch that, now I want to do this. This is basically the idea behind the CSS and all the code that we've written so far. If anyone has a question, please ask it in the chat. I'm trying to pay attention and try to help, but at the same time, Val and Raquel are here. Yeah, and Val will be there to help us because she's amazing. Cool. So, is the basics of CSS so far clear? I hope it is. And I'm going to now start showing you another thing, which is the width and the size. Like I said, if I say to this H1, I scrolled above, and I say width is equal to 50 pixels, and I give it a semicolon. Now this rectangle has a width of 50 pixels. As you can see, now it doesn't take the whole width of the page. Why? Because like Val said earlier, unless told otherwise, the default width is to take as much space as its parent container. If I now say here, height 500 pixels, it will take 500 pixels. Once again, here, in terms of height, usually what CSS does is it takes as much height as it needs, and the width is usually it takes as much height as it's designed to do, as its default behavior. Another important thing is that you will not memorize this. This is not something it's something that you memorize, but not as if it's studying. You get it inside your brain because you repeat it so many times. This is not rocket science. This is not something that will hopefully take you hundreds of years to do. It's something that with some work and a lot of practice, you'll just become ingrained in your head. That's a good thing. Okay. So now I'm going to, I think I can share this. Can I share this? I'll just see if I can share this, because if I can share it, I'll put it as a link and you can all see the current code. Okay, here. It's not a question, but feel free to follow this line of these code to see the current status and the things that we've seen. I'm going to, in the meantime, create a new Codepen, and I just wanted to go through this so you can visually see something, and then we can then celebrate a little bit as well. I'm going to create a new page, a new website from scratch, and this is where we're going to actually start building our remote business. I'm going to take 3 minutes and let people try to chat, ask questions also in the chat, because we have the time is scheduled so far for me on my head is good. I want to know, I want to see people what they're thinking, if they're very scared, and at the same time, please give me a business idea that we're going to build the website for it. And as we're building it, we're going to learn a couple more tricks. a couple more tricks there you pull out of the hat, but also it's interesting for me to see how we can build, I don't know, the best Pokédex thing. Usually it's Pokemon and Star Wars, which are usually the most used examples in coding. But please, any idea, any business that you're thinking of building, a drop shipping website, a new social media, I just want to see a couple of ideas in the chat. I'll give it a couple of minutes. And I hope that you can also have the link and see if you get the things. Some of these concepts, the good thing is that you learn them once and you don't have to relearn them. Cool? Okay, let me just get some water. 1 second. Okay, Crowdcast really loves taking its time on the chat. Just a landing page. Yeah, just a simple landing page. Yes, of course, Webflow allows much more customization, but at the end of the day, they are levels of abstraction outside of coding. So they're using code to make your life easier. Webflow is levels above everything else in the competition. Squarespace is a lot of levels above. Then you have Wix, then you have others. It's just for throwing something in, it's very good. It's similar in the same level. That's what I mean by website builders. You still need to know a little bit of code, for example, for Webflow if you want to do something better. WordPress, for a lot of WordPress websites, you actually need to know code for that. Okay, the Ironhack, so Raquel in this case, proposed a new travel app. This seems like an interesting idea, even though I think it's just torture because not a lot of people can travel now. So I don't know if that's the best idea. Photography website. Okay, perfect. Let's take the photography website. That seems like an amazing idea. So from here, I'm going to open a body tag, not Adobe. And now I close the body. Okay. So the first thing that I'm going to build here is going to say H1 photography website. So photography website. We have the H1 that is basically just telling us this is the photography website. If we want to put this in the center, we have to look a little bit online. So if I say CSS align text to center. Oh, there's a text align property. Let me just remove this for a second. We have a text align that says text align : center. Okay, let's see how this works. H1 text align center. Ladies and gentlemen, it's in the center. This is beautiful. This is beautiful. Okay, so now we have this. How about we maybe create a nav bar for our website? This is where the divs come in. You probably remember that I told you about divs. Divs are dividers. And the good thing about divs is that not only are they good dividers and not only bad dividers, but they basically work as almost a body, things that wrap content, and you can then style it a little bit. So if I move this here, nothing actually changes, but in the HTML itself, now every piece of text that I write here is going to be separated as two different environments, let's say as two different contexts. Everything that happens here, it's happening to that div. Everything that you style, it's going to happen there. This is the logic. So remove it. We have a div, and now we're going to create another div. And here I'll give it a class so we can also split them in our minds. And I'm going to say this is the gallery. Okay, we don't need to give it a huge thing so far. We have the div. And so for now, I'll just write an H4 that says gallery section and close the H4. Okay, so we have a gallery section. We have another div. Let's give it a class of, let's give it a class of services, because these amazing photographers that you all are, you want to survive doing it, even though we're all amazing people and we might want to take photography in our thing. Let's give ourselves a chance to make some money, because we're building our own remote entrepreneurship service. Service section, and remove the H4, close the H4 rather, and then close the services. And for now, let's just add a footer. Class footer. Footer. Perfect. I think our website is looking amazing, but maybe we can add a little bit of styling onto it. But for now, let's try maybe to get some images. I'm going to Unsplash. They did not advertise Unsplash. They're not sponsoring this video. It's not sponsored, but we're going to take it. And because I'm a person that loves animals, specifically dogs, I'm just going to get dogs. Looks cute, and you can go once again to Unsplash. I'm going to put it in the chat. If you want to get a couple of images, this looks cute, and this one looks cute. Okay, we have 1, 2, 3. I have 4 images here. If you want to also have the same images as I have, so you can also try to follow along, I'm trying to copy all the images to the chat so you can have it. And this is the last one. Okay, so now we have images, but funny thing, we haven't talked about images yet. So this is the time that we're going to go through images, and I'm just going to write HTML image on Google, HTML images, and you're going to see something is that in coding, you're always going to be Googling a lot. Google is your best friend here. So we have example, IMG, like OMG, but IMG, SRC, Pictruli, alt. Okay, let's break this down. IMG, you're saying that it's an image. SRC is the source of the image, imagining that you're coding locally, you want to give the source or the path to the image. In this case, because we're coding online, we're going to take the URL of the image. And then is alt. Alt means alternative. And I'm going to show you what alt does in the gallery. I'm going to make image, source, make some gibberish. And then I'm going to say alt equals some gibberish. And I'm going to call, and I'm going to close it. And basically, alt is taking care in case the image itself is broken. This is also good for screen readers and accessibility, so people that consume the website as blind people. The alt actually, as the screen reader goes through, it reads through the alt so that the blind person can try to get the best experience from the website. Okay, so now we have a source. I'm just going to get this one. Let me see if I can, maybe I can just copy this. See? Okay, I'm gonna then, so I'm going to right click, do copy image address, come back to the pen, and on the SRC, I'm just going to copy that image address. Hopefully it will show the image. It's a huge image. Good, but it's there. Can we get some celebration? Some clapping, some information? Please at least do it in your own house. That would be super helpful. Cool. Okay. So we have a big image. Maybe we should try to make this image a little bit smaller so we can both see it. So maybe let's do IMG. Thank you very much for the clap, clap, clap. I'm going to say IMG, and I'm going to say that I want a width of 100 pixels. And as soon as this loads, well, now the image is too small. I want to see the cuteness of this dog. So 300. Okay, we have one image. And we're actually preparing ourselves so that whenever other images come, we're actually, all of them are going to have the width of 300 pixels. So if I come to the yawning cutie dog, so cute, I'm going to say copy image address. I'm going to say another image. We've all seen this, src, copy, alt, super cute bug. Cute puppy. Uh-oh. Okay, this actually makes sense, but in case somebody doesn't understand why I said uh-oh, so far we've always seen stuff go line, 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 and we've actually seen in the previous example that I've already shared the code to, that for example, paragraphs, even if you add returns, if you press enter a couple of times, the text will still all be there. So in this case, we have the returns, but it's still going on a row. And why is that? It's because images, contrary to H1s and paragraphs, are considered line level elements. So they only take as much space as they actually need. Why the alt? Because once again, the super cute is cute. The alt is basically just saying it, informing the browser of what kind of image you're looking at. This is also very important when we're dealing with Google. Some of these alt images are actually searchable. So if you search for writing super cute dog, if this website is live, this alt will be searchable by Google. Is this clear? I hope, Susanna, that this is clear. The idea is that you, as you write alts, are not only things for screen readers. Imagine a blind person goes to your website and wants to hear about your photography. Maybe this is a little bit, this is bad for blind people. Imagine like a traveling website or something like that. That's what the alt stands for. Okay, so going back to the line level element, the image, because all images only take up 300 pixels and the screen is a little bit bigger than 300 pixels, it's going to go on and after the other, and then after the other, and then another one and another one. As long as they fit, they'll all be here. This is basically the best representation of a line level element. Good. So let's put the rest of our puppies and our dogs, because this dog photographer loves what they do. So source, alt, dogs, seems like an acceptable name, and this will be nom 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 nom, our alt. So image, source, copy it, alt equals nom 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 nom. Good. So now we have 4 websites. Our photography website is shaping up. I get the so what I'm doing is I right-click and click on copy image address, and then I take whatever it's copied there and putting on source. In Maud, I don't get the question mark instead of the image. Hakel and Val, can you just check that? Is it when this happened, maybe? Source, not source, alt, this. Which question mark, just to be sure? I don't know. I don't know how to help you there, Maud. Val will probably try to help you there and see what we can do. Okay, good. I hope this is it. Otherwise, I don't really know how to help you there. I'm going to remove it, and now we have our 4 dogs. Let's go to the services. I'm going to create a div. Why I'm going to create a div? Because I want to separate the 2 services that we're going to do. So we are already inside this section of services, but I want to go and build a section for each single service. So here I'm going to give class equals single service. And I'm going to copy this. And I'm going to make 1, 2, 3. We have 3 services, 3 divs, 3 areas, and say this. Okay, cool. In the first one, I'm going to create an H5. In this H5, I'm going to say, I take pictures. It's fine. Here, I'm going to make another H5, and I'm going to say, I edit pictures. And the third service is actually going to be the most important one. Is like, I like dogs. So if we're going through our website, I take pictures, I edit pictures, I like dogs. Okay. It's clear what this person does so far. And the footer, let's just say that I'm going to make a div. And I don't want to make a div now. I'm just going to say, this is the footer, get in touch. Okay. I'm going to give it a second for the chat to pick up. Remember when it goes, okay. I'm just going to give a second for the chat to pick up. But as you can see, without CSS, our website is actually kind of dull, to say the least. We have an issue that the website is, we have a good thing that the website already has content. We're building our photography website. We have content there. Now the images are actually are just there. We have no styling. So this is that CSS is actually going to work. Now, this is another thing that we're all actually going to start to pick up. Before that, I'm going to wait a little bit for the chat, and I'm going to ask a question to see if people were paying attention. And I know that this will take a minute, so sorry in advance for the awkward silence. The question is, I told you earlier that you basically code, you always code for two beings at least. You code for a computer, who else you coded to? I'm going to ask a question here again. So you code to at least two beings. Computer, who else? That's the question. Let's just see if we have time for them, if we can wait. I hope so far this is not going too fast. I tried to, oh, Maria has an option. Okay, very well. Let's wait for another person. Yourself, good. People are paying attention. So proud. I hope you're all, the next coder who will use the code, it's actually also away. Okay. Perfect. The other computer. Haha. Are you the computer? Show the last thing you wrote just before the I like dogs, of course. I edit pictures. So it's right. You're coding for the computer and you're actually coding for yourself. Mary actually said that you also code for the next coder who will use the code. But when you're coding alone, you are the next person. You are the another person. You're coding for the computer and for yourself. And right now, this is starting to get a little bit cryptic. We have divs, okay, div. We have divs inside divs. Everything inside. Okay, this is the time we're actually going to learn the HTML5, which are considered semantic elements. And I'm still going to ask a question. Which of these things do you think it's more clear for you to read? Div, class, footer, or much better, footer? This one class would be actually easy to get, but once again, I'm not trying to be just trying to get, okay, so that we have footer and we have footer. So this is much easier to read, and semantically it makes more sense for you to see like, oh, okay, this is the footer. You don't have to look at anything else. You don't have to look at classes. You don't have to look at anything. This is a footer. A footer behaves exactly like a div, but it's a footer. So if we have the main part in HTML, you also have something called the nav. And as you can see, things are changing at the same time, which is good. It's this website. Not all editors do this. For example, Notepad that was mentioned earlier. Not every editor does this. So we have a nav, and now we know that this is part of a nav. This is the section. This is a section. So for example, we can call it section. Section class gallery. We want this to be a section of the gallery because maybe we might have other sections in the website. And here we have another section called services. And honestly, I'm just giving you the section word instead of the div word because even though I use div a lot, whenever I have a website from scratch, I try to add these words, and these are HTML5 elements. Here from Free Code Camp, which is an amazing website to start your learning code journey. And all of these are, as you can see, multiple ways of writing basically the same thing. Besides time and picture, I think, all of these basically behave as the same thing. It's still a div. just with a better name, because now as I look at the code, I know what I'm looking at. Once again, you're coding for yourself as well. It may be more important than the computer, because the computer might not be able to read what the hell you're saying, but if you can read it, you can try to debug it. And now we have these divs. We also have something called an aside. I think we also have article. And this seems like a nice idea for article, so I'll just change it to article. And because these are all articles, I just remove the classes because we no longer need them, because these are unique. We always have articles underneath this thing. So article. So change it to article, and now delete the classes. I'll give you all a few seconds to catch up. Maybe this was a little bit fast. So once again, I removed the top two divs for navs. The second one, which was div class gallery, I just said section class gallery, section class services. Inside the section, we have articles, which are their own things, and then we have a footer. And as you can see, the whole website still looks exactly the same, which is good, because now, even though we changed a couple of letters throughout our whole code, or throughout our whole website, nothing broke. And this is the best feeling ever. We can refactor things, and refactor is the art of recoding or rewriting some things in a better, more approachable way. At least that's the goal, is that if nothing breaks and you still have the same behavior as before, this is beautiful. This is perfect. So now let's take this photography website navbar, and just in case you're wondering, if I say navbar, the nav background color to be, I think it's avocado. No, I forgot the name. Let's say yellow for now. So now we have this navbar. We know that the navbar is taking the whole block. So let's give it a height of, let's say 50 pixels. We just want the navbar to be a little bit bigger. Now we have this issue that we have space. Does that, and just wondering, and now I need people to answer. Do you all have this weird space, and as you're all writing it, you also have this weird space between the top and the sides? Can you all see it? Just going to give it a few seconds. Well, as people are writing, hopefully saying, yeah, I also get it. I don't get this is happening, but hopefully this is considered default value. As you can see, not in, besides here and here, you don't see me writing sizes anywhere, even though this size is bigger than this one, this size is bigger than this one, and things are different sizes, even though I didn't write anything. These are the default values of the website. And this happens because, well, the default values of the website are there to give you a starting value, but you want to maybe override them. So the way that I will go into override it in the CSS is I'm going to say everything, and encoding the star literally means every selector. And this is probably the least specific thing, because it's everyone. You start with this, and I'm going to introduce you to two new CSS properties. Padding. I'm going to say 1 for now, and I'm going to say margin, which is 1. So the best way that I can explain padding and margin, these are all they are all relative to code, all relative to content, but it's relative to where they are, and it's space. So if we take this yellow one, we have some space between the yellow and the top. It means that this part might have a padding top or a margin top of X value. So if I take this navbar and I say, for example, margin top 0, hopefully something happens. Nope. Maybe it's the padding. Also no. Huh. Interesting. If I do this. Okay. So what you're seeing here, this is actually a more advanced selector. So if I say that everything starts out with the padding margin of 0, it's because now they're all much more pushed up. And as you can see here, for example, this got plugged in bigger, and now we don't have as much space as we were having before. This is because basically we're setting every default value of its padding and margin to 0. Once again, going back to margin and padding. So if you think of margin and padding, is if you look at, for example, a screen. I'm looking at a screen right now, or let me do it front to you. I'm looking at a screen of my MacBook, and I have the screen. If we assume that that is the content, and then I have a little bit of space between that and the edges of the computer, that space is basically it's basically the padding. It's the space between something itself and the border. I'm just going to go down here quickly, and I'm going to create a div. I'm going to say box. This is usually called the box model. So you can all see. Go all the way down, and I have this box. Hopefully. I don't have a box. I broke code. This is nice. Interesting. Wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. Okay. So, stupid. Okay. My box is here because this is an H1, therefore it was aligned to the center. Funny thing, my styles got me confused. Okay, we have H1 box. I'm going to say that I'm going to give it a class of box. And I'm going to do this. The box is going to have a background color of red. And if I come here, the box should have a background color of red. Am I right? And I think I did something wrong with the nav here. Okay. So the box has a background color of red. If I give box a padding of 10 pixels, you're going to see that the space between box, I forgot the semicolon here. I wrote the background color and height under the H1, and it looks the same as yours. Okay, so the thing is, I have this because so far, the major difference is that the nav bar is supposed to be a sectioning. It's supposed to be a box that you're putting content in. H1 is supposed to be a title. And here I have an H1 inside the nav, and so far it's behaving exactly the same. Ideally, whenever we add a couple more links here to the nav, H1 is supposed to be a separate entity from the nav itself. So continuing, as you can see, I'm padding 10 pixels, and now we have a couple more pixels. If I do 50 pixels, and I come back down here, now we have 50 pixels above and below. Theoretically, we also have the box itself. This H1 also has 10 pixels here, no, 50 pixels here and here. So it's giving 50 pixels inwards in itself. And then I'm going to say box is going to also have a border of 1 pixel, solid black. Now this got confusing. You don't see the border. Maybe you do. Let me say 10 pixels, solid black. Okay. So you might be wondering why the hell is the border here and not around the text. It's because at the very least, this has 50 pixels of padding, but because we also are in an H1, I think, because we're also in an H1, this takes as much space as it can. So right now it's taking the whole damn website, basically. And so basically the padding is the space between itself, between the H1 and the border. But now I'm also going to say margin is going to be 50 pixels. And the moment that I do this, it separates. So now what do we have? We have 50 pixels away from the outer component, the outer parent. What is the outer parent of this? It's the div. The div takes the whole space. Therefore, this goes 50 pixels in, 50 pixels in, 50 pixels in, and 50 pixels in. If you don't understand, if I give it a class here, I say border, and here say border, border 1 pixel solid blue. And here you can see that we have the padding of this box. The background is red, so you can see all the content that the box itself has. We have padding, which is the space until the border. We have the border, and then we have the margin. Is this clear for everyone? This is called the box model. Like, and this is some of the first things that you learn in CSS. If you have any questions so far, please let me know in the chat. Get some more water. Sorry, I can't talk for an hour straight. Is weird. Let me see if there's any question in the question, maybe. Okay. I think no one has any questions so far. If I have, I will let you know. Okay, so this is the box model. I will leave it here, but let's ignore this for our website because this is more for you to have a visual representation. But I want to keep working from here. Cool? Okay. I'll go back to the navbar, and I want to do something. I want to be able to link between our sections. So here I'm going to say no, we'll do that in a second. Okay. So now that I know that photography, this is a photography website, maybe I want to go back to the way things were, and I'm going to do something else that you've never seen before. Probably here it's going to say nav h1. I'll leave you time. Does anyone think they know what this nav h1 is selecting? And please feel free to take time. I'll also wait for people what this nav h1. This is a different selector that we haven't seen before. So far, it's usually individual selector, do this. Now we're selecting two things. What do you think it is? Okay, people are hopefully writing. I hope so. Okay, if no one is going to write and Crowdcast wants to be this slow, I'll try to nav h1. Yes, but what are we selecting? Do you know what we're selecting? If you don't know, we're basically going to select the exactly. Caro knows it. Perfect. It's your select h1 that it's inside the nav. And if you want to be sure, let's change its color green. Green. And now we're changing. As you can see, we didn't change the box. Here we're just changing this h1. So we have h1 text align center. And if I want to do, let's do color white. If I come here, the color is now white, but nav h1 is being more specific. It's going to be the direct child of the nav. Okay, cool. So I'm going to say that this h1, I don't want it to text align to the center. I'm just going to say text align left. Text align left. Now this is now the white color. It hurts. You say color is actually gray. It won't look good for now, but so that I can read it. Okay. So now we put this to the side, but I think if I add the background color again, this will be again taking the whole space, and this is not what we want because we want to have links. How do we create a link inside HTML? We use considered lists because basically a navbar is nothing else than a list of links to check. So I'm going to do a list rather. In HTML, you have two types of lists. Let's do HTML lists. We have HTML lists. Once again, I'm going to paste it here. So we have ordered lists and unordered lists. I kind of selected them in different orders, but unordered lists are these are the dots usually, and you have ordered is 1, 2, 3, 4, A, B, C, D, whatever. So if I'm here, and I'm going to give it an unordered list because I don't want people to know that this link is the first link in our list. This is the second. Let's just make it a list. So I'm going to say unordered list, UL. And each item of a list is basically a list item. And if we're going through UL, maybe list item LI. And I'm going to say gallery. And we have a gallery. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a gallery. Isn't this beautiful? It's amazing that we got an H1 with the background color, the gallery inside the nav, and it's selecting. And now if I create another one, if I create something else, and now the second is services, if I'm not mistaken, we have a second link. Oh, something is about to happen. This can't be. This is not a good experience for a user. If I make another one just for the footer, why? This starts to look awful. And why is that? Is because our nav has a predefined height. Not a predefined, a defined height. And the moment that something goes up as it's writing, because each list item is going to be a block level element, the moment that it goes below, if it goes above the 50 pixels height that it needs, as you can see, the footer goes all the way here, the nav says, I'm not touching anymore, but the content still tries to get pushed up and pushed on. So let's, for now, remove this height, and now the nav should take this content. Okay, I have a question for everyone. I won't wait for the answer, but this is just for you to think. And this is one of the main issues where CSS for a long time was considered a joke language or a big issue. It's because it's very hard to be able to navigate and manipulate positions. Initially, that's something called a float. We're imagining, if you can see my camera. I don't know if you can see my camera. Wait, can you see my camera? Wait, let me click SQL. Can you see? Okay, you cannot see my camera. Amazing. More or less, yes, but let's say no. Let's assume that we have text. In order to split them, as we're seeing in HTML, we would have this section. So this area, it's a div, for example. We can argue that this area is another div, and then we have individual sections here, for example. We would have to float something and clear and then use the syntax that it's no longer used. What we can use is something called display flex. And this is one of the most magical things that CSS has for me. And I'm going to write display flex. And now, now the H1 doesn't take as much space as it needs. We have things that are happening, and they're beautiful. And now the LIs, which are one word, are bigger than the H1. Why? Because what display flex does is it turns every child element. So the nav bar has nav, it has a UL, and then H1 as a child, and the nav still has grandchilds, which are LIs. So what is this doing? The H1 is taking as much space as it needs. It's taking a space here. And then what does the UL do? The UL just takes, okay, the rest is mine. And thank you very much, and then it takes it. In case we want to do something else, and I know that Val will share a couple of resources for flex, I'm just going to say justify content space between. I put space between them apart, and now we have a nav bar with colors. I'm going to start removing the colors because now they don't make sense. And this H1, where did I do the background color red here? Okay. Interestingly enough, we maybe don't want this photography website to be all the way to the top, and maybe they should be somehow centered. And the good thing is that Flexbox allows us to align, I think it's items, center. Let's see. It's aligned here, but for some reason, this is not the best experience to walk through a website. This is still weird happening. This is still behavior. What about, can we maybe flex the UL? Some people might be wondering. We can. We get the direct child UL, and we say display flex. And as soon as I do this, they are all like that. Now, you may be wondering, what are these dots? Because the HTML lists have the dots. you have to remove them. How do you remove them? With CSS. So if I say add nav ULI, we're saying the child, the li, which is the direct child, the ul, which is the direct child of a nav, is going to say list item, I think. None. No. Okay, let's see CSS list item. And this is something that I not always remember. List style, maybe. List style. We go through this. List style type, I think. We have none, maybe. None. Okay. As you can see, I don't have this memorized. The list style type. Now I think we have the none. Exactly. So now we split them apart. And as you can see, I don't want you to look at this as like, oh, loser doesn't know what to do, doesn't remember CSS, and he's teaching us. No, is that I know what to search for, and I know the words. I might not remember exactly what it's supposed to see. It's supposed to be. And once again, this is very also a good learning for you all, is that you will not have to memorize this. You just have to know what to look for. And I know that I'm looking for the list style. What is the list style type? And we have it. As you can see now, they are all aligned, but now we should maybe go back to the nav and give it a height. Let's go back and say 50 pixels. Now maybe the UL can be a little bit bigger, so you can say width 300 pixels. And now they're all together. Maybe we can copy this justify content for them to be a little bit more far apart. There we go. We have a nav bar featured, and you'll be able to see something. It's also somewhat responsive. Obviously, the footer as I'm dragging disappears, but sorry. Okay. Now look at it. I'm just trying to let you see that nav bar still. Oh. So as you can see, the nav bar is still somewhat responsive, even though things are happening. Don't look at what's happening, just that my computer behaves in a weird way. Okay. So now, one last thing that maybe a lot of people might see, that a lot of websites tend to work on this weird container that usually is a lot of space between. And this is the width of a page. And if I say that body, let's wrap this whole website in a div, which is also what a lot of websites have. If I wrap the whole website in a div, and this is usually the best practice, that it has a class of container. And I come here and say container with 1000 pixels. You see that a lot of these things will be pushed inward. What actually a lot of people use is that I don't want this to ever always have to be max. I don't want this to always have to be 1000 pixels. I want this to grow in the website, but I want the max width to be 1000. So as it's scaling down, it will scale accordingly. But if it goes ever above 1000 pixels, it won't let it grow anymore. And now let's say 1200, just in case, because my screen is a little bit bigger. And the last thing that I'm going to see is I want to center things. Theoretically, I can text align center. Let's see if this works. It worked, but it only aligned things within it. If we want to align the div itself, we're going to use the margin. And this is just a hack. We say 0 auto. And as you learn CSS, you'll start to read more about these things. Basically, both padding and margin tend to follow a clockwise perspective. So if you just give it one value, you're saying the values of all the padding directions are 0. 0 to the top, 0 to the right, 0 to the bottom, 0 to the left. If you use two values, you're saying 0 to top and bottom, auto left and right. If you use three values, is 0 top or X top, Y left and right, Z down, bottom. And if you use 4, it's still up, right, down, left, like a clock. That's the logic. So as you can see, even though the website is not still perfect, it's starting to gain a little bit of shape. Now let's work a little bit on our gallery section. Maybe this gallery section no longer is necessary, this H4, because we know that we are inside a gallery, but still, let's put an H2 that says my works. H2. This looks a little bit better, I think. But now everything is kind of centered in a weird way. Why is this? Do we have any div that it's centering? Okay. I'm going to remove this text align because that's what's screwing up. So why am I removing the text align? In case you don't know, like I said, a lot of these values are default values. And some of these default values are inherited. So if the parent says something, the child will also be the same thing. So right now, everything is centered because my container, which is the whole thing wrapping the whole website, is saying text align. Therefore, the nav will be text aligned, but because it has its own, our nav has its own stylings, it's doing its own thing. That's fine. So it doesn't behave according to what the parent does. So we leave the nav. And because everything else, this gallery section, I didn't style it, it's inheriting it from the container. Okay, so if I remove the container, not the container text align, everything will now be shifted to the left because it's the default value for Western countries. And for a lot of countries that it's aligned to the left and you read it left to right. If you were reading it, for example, from a Japanese, it would be aligned in a different way. Good. We're now going to do another display flex on these images. So maybe what we should do is create a div that wraps the whole thing, and let's give it a class of images that wraps all the images. And I now close div. All the images are here. So if I come here and I say .images, in this case, because I'm always targeting one after the other and it's very specific, it doesn't really matter that I'm making them in a weird order. It's just that I always put them above. Theoretically, it's a much bigger website with things that can coincide with each other. You'd put them in their own structure, but it is fine. So the images, I'm going to say display flex and justify content space between. So what's happening now is that some of these images, we were trying to make them 300 pixels, but now it's trying to fix all of them to their own places. So what we can do now for this, we can say images, image. We want it to have a margin of 0 and, for example, 20 pixels. And now what this will do is give us a little bit of space between the images. But now this first one, I don't want it to have a good margin. It starts to get a little bit weird. So what we can do to be a little bit more on the hacker side is just give it a class of saying first and just target the first and say margin left, say 0. And now, hopefully, this should work. Let me just try something. Because I don't want this to be... okay. Oh, interesting. So, okay. This is actually interesting, and this is I burned myself. We have .images that's doing something, and I'm trying to do .image .first. It's not doing anything because here, even though it's up after it, it's winning battle of specificity. And I think Valerie shared something. The battle of specificity, we're getting all the images inside a class. Here, I'm just getting a class. So actually, if I want this to work, I actually need to do .images .first, and now this should work. Okay, and maybe let's give the images themselves a margin top of 50 pixels so that we have a little bit of spacing between the my works and this. And actually, let's get the gallery and give them a margin of 50 pixels. So now we have space. We have space and we have the website. So as you can see, we now have a nav bar, a whole nav bar with possible links here. We have images that we're showing in the grid, and as I move it, the image try to be somewhat responsive. And this is the biggest lesson that you might have, is that as we're building, we tend to use, I'm using here pixels, but another thing you can use is percentage values. And percentage values are values, not in here, but for example, 300 pixels. 300 pixels is a very specific value, so as I do this, eventually the images will no longer be visible. Why? It's because not only the parent container, which was the 1,000 pixels, but we're saying 300 pixels, it's not varying. So if you want to make it a little bit more responsive, I can say 50%, for example. And now they're all 50% of what the parent lets us. So because we have, let's say, 20, we have 20 pixels. Now they are 20 pixels of whatever the parent is. Does this make sense? I hope this makes sense. Now, we can still go through the whole website, but in these two things, I think you can already see the power of HTML, CSS. We started with, just going to cut everything. We start with this, with a very weird looking website. And with just CSS, we now have a little bit more style section. This is a good exercise for you. I'll share the screen, and you can eventually try this. And if you want, I can put Raquel can put my name into this. And if you want, as far as I'm concerned, you can actually send this to me, and I can also help. But the idea is that you can look at this and see the logic that was implemented, and also see some of the resources that Val is sharing, that you can be much more comfortable with CSS. And as you can see, what I said about the CSS also, and more that applies to HTML, if I remove everything from the HTML, nothing is shown. So you need both of them to be working combined, and then you can be able to design it and build something with a good layout and a good way to build websites. And now going more to outside of the coding part, but into the coding part, as remote people, as Corona hit, people are moving more into remote jobs, and it's important for you to be able to sell your skills. For now, I don't know why this is not showing. That's fine. Codepen sometimes does this. And actually, because somebody earlier mentioned Webflow, there's multiple software that you can use to build a remote clientele, which we have. I'm going to put here. We have Card, which was my first ever, I think it's called Cards. Card, I think it was my first ever website was built with this. These are one-page responsive websites, and most of them are for free, and you can drag and drop things. If you're learning how to code, this is the first thing that I would go. Then I would jump up the complexity from Card to something else, to something else, to something else. And as you're learning more about code, you'll be able to build your own website, and you will be able to use these things to get clients, because the thing that they choose or look for is for you. If you apply for something, be it a freelancer or if you're building your own business, whenever somebody looks for you, they'll look for you on Google. And you might have a social media account, but it is my opinion that it's better to have a website, because the website will always be yours. People can't take that down. People cannot say, this is not acceptable. No, it's your website, it's live. And you will have always full control. It's not Facebook that's telling you what to do, what to post, how to post. If you want to write about dogs, it's your website. You don't have people, if you don't want people to comment, people won't comment. It's still your website. And this is just me wrapping up. I know that for some reason this isn't working. As we're wrapping up, let me see. Wake up. Okay. This section, I'll leave it as homework for you to play around. I'll copy the link here. And I'll also post card.co. As a web developer, I know that I can recommend Squarespace in these things, because these places have a value in the market. A lot of people will say, no, those are bad. No, they have a place. If you don't have the time to go through learning how to code and you want a website, these are the places to go. So with that, Raquel, do you want to go through something now? Because I think it's in the hour and a half now.
Hi again, everyone. This was intense. If it was the first time that you've been coding, and Val, you can come back now as well if you want. If this was the first time that you were coding, I know that this can be very, very intense. I didn't say in the beginning, but I'm actually doing the web development bootcamp in part-time with Andre and Val, actually. So I know how this can be hard in the beginning and a lot of information to take. So please remember that this is recorded and that you can review this later, okay? We don't have a lot of time, because this website was for you to code along and for you to practice. And I know that you asked a few questions, which was great. So, but if you still want to ask a few questions about Ironhack or about coding in general, about our bootcamps, or about what we've been talking about, or if you still have questions for Val, for Andre, or for me, we still have a little bit of time. Just don't forget that you have the resources here on Ask a Question. Val shared. Piece of advice, this is very, very useful for you. Please keep on practicing this. This is great. This webinar is great for you to keep to open up the possibilities of coding. But if you still want to pursue this, the important thing is for you to practice. And last but not least, in terms of reminders, you have here the green button that you see below the videos, in which we have a few resources, extra resources for you. So upcoming webinars, not only on web dev, but on UX, UI design and data, other blog posts that we're sharing, and of course the website with the courses and so on, if you want to know a little bit more information. All right. So guys, I don't know if you, Val and Andrew, want to share something else. If we have no questions, maybe we can wrap it up. Let me know if you want to share any other thing, maybe another link or something, or another piece of advice to go for the road.
Let me see. Well, first of all, I hope... Oh, there's a lot of echo. I hope you enjoy this, and I'm really passionate about this, and I hope that you guys find one more tool to be empowered, especially in these trying times. It's not easy to just start from scratch, any kind of tool, any kind of knowledge. But with this, I hope that you get a taste of it. And again, what Andrea said and what Rebecca said is much about practice, about building that muscle memory. It's not only the theory. Theory only gets you so far, especially in coding. It's about making those mistakes and getting back up twice as quick. I put you up in the links some games that are good for you to practice, especially about CSS. It is very much about learning how you can grab the structure of your skeleton and put it up, put it down. Where does it go? It disappear from your screen. Oh my God, what's going on? That sort of stuff, it's what gets you actually learning, not only the part of reading and understanding what's going on, it's you seeing. And I hope that this was really helpful, especially the code alongs. They're really, really good for you to pick up these subjects and just make that final push for you to actually get to it. So yeah, it was wonderful meeting you all, and
that is it. I wouldn't say it better. And yes, I can stress this enough. This is the beginning for you guys. I'm very glad it was very challenging for you, Susanna, and I appreciate all your feedback, guys. I'm glad that you could do the code along to follow everything. This is the beginning, and I hope you keep on practicing, guys. So amazing job. Thank you, Val, and thank you, Andrea, for everything. And thank you, guys, for your feedback. Please keep on practicing and keep on coming on the upcoming webinars, and let us know, of course, every time we leave your feedback and how things are going. And I guess I'll see you in another webinar. All right. Bye, guys, and thank you.
Bye.